Shalom from Israel to all of the Daystar viewers around the world. I'm Moshe Bar Tzvi, the producer and founder of Israel Now News. We at Israel Now News are dedicated to bringing you the full story and the truth about Israel from Israel. It's written in the Holy Bible when David said in Psalm 25:5, "Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the God of my salvation. For you I wait all the day long." And God says in Zechariah 8:16, "These are the things that you shall do. Speak out the truth to one another. Judge with truth and judgment to peace in your gates. And always search for the truth, and the truth shall set you free." John 8:31. I hope you enjoyed the program. God bless you from Jerusalem. Shalom, shalom.
Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Erin Viner.
And I'm Rebecca Rand.
Our top story is the re-election of Barack Obama as the President of the United States. After spending the last several weeks of the campaign nearly deadlocked with his Republican rival Mitt Romney, the American people reinstated the incumbent president for another 4-year term in the White House. Celebrations of the Obama victory were held throughout the United States as well as here in Israel.
Israeli newspapers are reporting that a senior White House advisor has been secretly meeting with representatives from Iran. Iranian-born Valerie Jarrett serves as personal emissary to Barack Obama and at his request has held several meetings with representatives of the Ayatollah in Bahrain. The ultimate goal of the covert meetings was to establish a direct line of communication with Iran so that after the U.S. presidential elections, full diplomatic relations with the Islamic Republic could be formally reestablished.
3 IDF soldiers were injured when Palestinians remotely detonated a roadside bomb near the Gaza border. The Israeli troops were on a routine patrol when they were targeted by the blast. 2 of the injured sustained light wounds, and the third was airlifted to a nearby hospital in moderate condition. The IDF released a statement saying that the Army will not tolerate attempts to injure Israeli civilians or security personnel and will continue to act against any terrorist entity trying to attack the state of Israel.
The fighting in Syria has spilled over into northern Israel. 3 Syrian tanks entered the demilitarized zone of the Golan Heights last week while they were advancing on rebel fighters. Several mortars and rocket shells have fallen into the area, which appears to be the cause of a fire in the Golan last week. An IDF jeep was struck by several stray Syrian bullets while it was patrolling the northern border. No one was injured, but the Israeli government has logged complaints with UN peacekeeping forces over the incidents. The IDF has been on high alert in the Golan. The Mount Hermon skiing and tourist site was closed briefly last month due to concerns over Syrian troop movement near the border.
In a related story, the Syrian army reportedly killed more than 30 people after launching an assault against opposition forces in a densely populated refugee camp housing an estimated 150,000 Palestinians. The Yarmouk camp is located near Damascus and is home to many descendants of Arabs who fled Israel during the 1948 War of Independence and were forced to remain in the refugee camp after Arab states refused to absorb them into their own countries. Since that time, the residents' prolonged suffering has been used as a political ploy to bolster claims to their right to return to the land of Israel. This latest round of senseless violence by the regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad displays the apparent disregard the government holds for the refugees' well-being.
A Jewish man was attacked and badly beaten by a gang of Arabs in Marseille, France last week. France has been plagued by a wave of anti-Semitic attacks from the Muslim community there. Last month, the Security Agency for French Jewry reported that there has been a 45% rise in anti-Semitic attacks in France since 2011.
The United States and Israel are continuing the largest joint military exercise in the history of the two friendly armies. More than 1,000 U.S. soldiers are stationed throughout the Holy Land, while others are participating from locations in the Mediterranean and Europe. Together with 1,500 Israeli troops, more than 3,500 military personnel are involved in the drill, which is being held to improve the combined military capabilities of both nations. During a press conference from the Israeli president's residence in Jerusalem, the chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, Martin Dempsey, said that the current exercise is proof of the United States' strong commitment to remain unified with Israel.
A group of young Arab Christians who wish to serve in the IDF are being threatened by Muslims in their community. About 120 Christian Arabs in Nazareth attended an IDF conference several weeks ago, expressing their interest in serving in the IDF or national service. The Arab media subsequently printed pictures of the young Christians, calling them traitors and demanding that they be hunted down. An Orthodox priest who participated in the event was suspended from his position, then excommunicated by the Arab Orthodox Council for what they called collaborating with the enemy. Soldiers from this sector fear a bloody backlash from the Arabs in their community and have requested special permission to return from army service in civilian clothing to hopefully avoid being lynched.
Despite pressure from the United States and the European Union, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas remains determined to formally request that the United Nations General Assembly upgrade the entity's status to that of a non-member observer state. The move is opposed by the United States and Israel as being counterproductive to reaching a peaceful resolution in the Holy Land. Members of the Palestinian cabinet have already made their agenda clear that they intend to use the statehood bid as a means to further a diplomatic conflict. The Palestinian Authority has already made preparations to file lawsuits against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman, and several residents of Judea and Samaria for war crimes. Israeli leaders have fervently rejected the unilateral bid for statehood and reiterated that they are willing and ready to immediately return to the negotiation table.
A Tunisian political party has filed a lawsuit against Israel for the assassination of Abu Jihad 24 years ago. According to the Wafa Party, which holds 12 of 217 seats in Tunisia's Constituent Assembly, Israel perpetrated the assassination on Tunisian soil and therefore is guilty of war crimes. Abu Jihad was a merciless terrorist who orchestrated the First Intifada, which claimed the lives of 185 Israelis.
The CEO of Microsoft visited Israel last week to launch an exciting new partnership with the Jewish state. According to Steve Ballmer, Microsoft is proud to work in an environment that nurtures innovation and has created such a large number of successful companies. Israeli Minister of Finance Yuval Steinitz praised the decision, saying that more multinational companies should be encouraged to invest in Israeli technology and establish development centers in the country because such investments yield substantial mutual benefits. The Israeli government benefits from global knowledge, whereas the companies benefit from Israel's human capital and the relative advantage of the country's high-tech industry.
Arabs on the Temple Mount were discovered burning the biblical cedars of Lebanon. This is the latest act of destruction of Jewish and Christian artifacts on the Muslim-controlled Temple Mount. The pillars had been removed from the Al-Aqsa Mosque during a renovation several years ago, and at the time, archaeologists dated them to be thousands of years old. They speculated that the beams were likely fixtures in the first temple. The Bible speaks of the cedars of Lebanon as one of the materials used to build the first temple. In order to appease the international Muslim community, the Israeli government has allowed the Muslim Waqf to retain control of the Temple Mount, but the Arabs have embarked on a campaign to systematically destroy Jewish and Christian archaeological artifacts found within Mount Moriah.
Muslim clerics throughout the Middle East have declared that Superstorm Sandy was a punishment from God. More than 100 people were killed when Sandy pounded the U.S. East Coast last week. Thousands of others were left without power for more than 1 week. During the storm, an Egyptian cleric preached for his followers to pray for the destruction of America and the United Nations, while a prominent Saudi cleric called the superstorm a wake-up call for the Americans to convert to Islam.
Israel Flying Aid, a global humanitarian aid organization, has dispatched its first group of relief workers to New York in the wake of Superstorm Sandy. According to Moti Kahana, IFA's North American Operations Manager, Israel is the only foreign nation to provide humanitarian assistance to the U.S. during the disaster. Israel Flying Aid assists communities around the world after natural or man-made disasters. They have helped to save lives in Japan, Haiti, Iraq, Turkey, South Sudan, and the United States after Hurricane Katrina, and now after Superstorm Sandy. That concludes the news portion of our show. Please stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein, and we're here in the luxurious Daystar Studios overlooking the old city of Jerusalem. My guest today is Sandra Barris, Director of Christian Friends of Israeli Communities. Sandra, thank you for being on the show.
It's great to be here, Josh.
Sandra, what is the organization Christian Friends of Israeli Communities?
Well, it's a great organization, I have to tell you. We were founded 15 years ago, and since then we have been linking Christians from all over the world, specifically with the Jewish communities in biblical Israel, Judea and Samaria. So many people around the world look at us and say, oh, settlements, they're occupied, they're not legitimate. But Christians who read the Bible understand that this is the center of the land that God promised to our forefathers. And we enable Christians to connect not only with what happened here in biblical times, but what is happening here today.
Sandra, as an Orthodox Jewish woman living in Judea and Samaria, why is Judea and Samaria so significant to us biblically?
Well, it all begins with Abraham. God speaks to Abraham 4,000 years ago when he's minding his own business in what is today Iraq, and tells him to leave everything behind and go forward to the land that I will show you. And Abraham, I call him the first Zionist, he did exactly what God said. He acted out on faith. And where did he first stop? He first stopped in Samaria. Scripture tells us in Genesis 12 that he went to the place of Shechem near the oak of Moreh. Well, we now have a Jewish community called Elon Moreh, which is the original biblical Hebrew word for the oak of Moreh. What more biblical connection can you have than that to Judea and Samaria? So if somebody comes and says, Jews don't belong in Samaria or in Judea, I have to say, if we don't belong there, we don't belong anywhere in Israel.
You know, it's interesting. The nations around the world are trying to rip up Judea and Samaria piece by piece, give it to the Palestinians, take it away from the Jews, destroy the communities. Why is it such a political point of contention?
Well, actually, I think one of the problems is that the world around us doesn't understand the deep spiritual connection between the people of Israel and the land of Israel. And when you understand that spiritual connection, you can't deny what Judea and Samaria is all about. On the other hand, when you have an Arab world surrounding us who does understand our claim to a spiritual connection, but it is exactly that spiritual connection that they are trying to deny. For if they believe that the Jews have a right to any part of the land of Israel, but certainly the heart of biblical Israel, then they have to call into question all of their beliefs. And of course they can't do that. And they have succeeded, in my opinion, in convincing so much of the world that we don't belong here.
You know, the world calls Judea and Samaria the West Bank. Where does the term West Bank come from? It's been Judea and Samaria for thousands of years. Please explain that to us.
Well, actually, the West Bank, ironically, is a term that was given to the area by King Hussein of Jordan, because for 19 years, Jordan occupied illegally this area of the country. And it was only in 1967, after Jordan attacked Israel, that Israel was able to liberate this land once again. The problem is, if the world were to call this area Judea and Samaria, which is the appropriate biblical name, then they would have a hard time justifying that Jews don't belong there. It's kind of difficult to say Jews don't belong in Judea. Doesn't make sense. And so that's really why they keep going back and calling it the West Bank, even though that name in and of itself is such an anachronism.
Well, now people talk about the political negotiations, the so-called peace process that really doesn't exist, but they talk about dividing Judea and Samaria. Some even say to destroy communities in Judea and Samaria. What is your organization doing to make sure that there's always a Jewish presence in Judea and Samaria?
Well, we are not a political organization. What we are doing is strengthening the people who are actually living in Judea and Samaria. It was Menachem Begin many decades ago who first coined the term facts on the ground. And that's exactly what the communities are. People today, 360,000 Jews living in Judea and Samaria. And by living there, we have created a reality that no one in the world can really deny. You know, at one point people would say, oh, we're going to dismantle the settlements as if they were Lego land. But how do you dismantle the homes and lives of 360,000 people? It's really impossible. And what we're doing at CFOIC is strengthening these communities, helping the people, providing support for schools and for children's programs, for needy families, medical and emergency equipment, the whole gamut of humanitarian needs, so that we can make it easier for these people to hold on to their biblical heritage.
Sandra, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewers?
Come and join us. Take part in the fulfillment of prophecy. When you get involved with us in Christian Friends of Israeli Communities and come and visit with us, connect with us, you too will be taking part in the amazing miracle that is the return of the Jewish people to the biblical heartland that we are seeing in Israel today.
Thank you, Sandra, for being on the show. And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
More than 1 million Jewish children have been killed by abortion in Israel since 1948. Israel is currently engaged in a demographic war for its very survival as a Jewish state. Imagine what a difference 1 million more Jews would have made for Israel. Friends of Efrat saves the lives of thousands of children every year by providing support to pregnant women in distress. Since 1977, Efrat has saved over 30,000 lives and is recognized as a world leader in preventing abortions. You can play a major role in Israel's survival now by helping us save Israel's unborn children.
Up next, Shining Light from Israel.
So what was the burning bush from which God appeared to Moses? And what kind of tree enticed Adam and Eve with its forbidden fruit? Stretching across 35 acres of the ancient city's grounds, the Jerusalem Botanical Gardens offers a journey into the Bible's rich and mystical world of plants and trees with its Bible path.
We realise that while we're not the largest garden in the world, we are the only one in Jerusalem, and that gives us a certain cachet. We have the plants here, we certainly have the botanical expertise, and we are acquiring quite a vast knowledge about the role of these plants in the Bible, and hopefully we'll be extending that to the Quran as well.
The Jerusalem Botanical Garden is divided into 6 geographical regions. The Bible path runs through the Asian and Mediterranean sections, and one can either do a self-guided tour with the use of plaques along the way in English, Hebrew, and Arabic, or one can pick up an audio guide at the ticket booth. Along the path, one will see many of the ancient trees and plants that appear in the Bible, accompanied by interesting historical explanations and discussions.
This is the Christ thorn jujube. It's so called because it's thought that it was used to make the crown of thorns for Jesus before he went up on the cross. In the parable of Yotam in the Bible, this tree appears as a symbol of violence and aggression. Ancient Israeli farmers would have understood what that means. Not only does the tree have these terrible thorns, but it also reproduces by rootstock. What does that mean? It means that when the tree is harmed in any way, shoots will pop up from the root under the ground. The shoots develop into new trees, and they literally steal the water and the nutrients from any other plants around.
The Bible is filled with plant-related imagery. There are 110 plant names that appear in the Bible in the form of prophecies, sermons, fables, and commandments. They are used as symbols on the basis of both physical and botanical characteristics.
Now, the Bible uses plants as a kind of code, and if you don't understand how the tree behaves, then you can't fully appreciate what the Bible's trying to say. Psalm 128 says, "May your wife be like a vine around your house." Grapes are a symbol of fertility. "And may your children be like olive shoots around your table." And if you look at a very old olive tree, you'll see that the saplings have actually become woody, and they've wrapped around the parent tree, may your children imbibe your ways, may they learn your values, and when you go on to the next world, they will actually take over from you. And so that an old olive tree will look as if it's covered in ropes, but it's actually the saplings, the children that have taken over from the father.
The traditional Bible crop exhibition, which grows native crops according to their agricultural seasons, allows one to experience how closely tied the historical events of the Bible are to the changing seasons. A beautiful vine-covered pergola at the base of the exhibit serves as an outdoor classroom.
We're sitting here in the outdoor classroom of the Bible Path, surrounded by vines. The vine is one of the 7 species with which the land of Israel is said to have been blessed, together with pomegranate, date, fig, olive, barley, wheat. These formed the basis of the economy and of the diet of the ancient peoples.
Further along the path is a pond that is surrounded by several important Bible plants, like the tall cedar, which symbolizes strength, and the useful date palm, which symbolizes righteousness. The pond is the starting point for a children's program called King Solomon's Garden. King Solomon was said to have known the language of the animals and plants, and the program is a lesson in values, using the human characteristics attributed to plants in the Bible. On the basis of the Bible Path, the Jerusalem Botanical Gardens have also produced a 10-lecture interactive English language online course about flora of the Holy Land, which emphasizes the role of plants in the Bible. And back to the question of the forbidden fruit that caused Adam and Eve's expulsion from the Garden of Eden. Well, according to the experts at the Jerusalem Botanical Gardens, it very well could have been the fig.
There are those who say that the fruit of the fig tree was probably the forbidden fruit of the tree of knowledge, and that's on the basis that only a tree sinful enough to have provided its fruit would also have provided its leaves to cover the nakedness of Adam and Eve.
This is Ayelet Saban for Israel Up Close.
Please stay tuned for the ICEJ report from the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem.
What makes the miracles of Jesus even more miraculous? Standing where they happened, in Israel. Come explore Jerusalem, where Jesus opened blind eyes. Visit the hills of Galilee, where Jesus fed the multitude. Stroll through Capernaum, where Jesus lived and taught and healed. To learn more about standing where it all happened in Israel, visit www.goisrael.com. Come visit Israel.
You'll never be the same.
Since its rebirth in 1948, the State of Israel has blossomed into a vibrant modern nation and an economic flagship of the Middle East. Although Israel has experienced periods of relative peace and strong economic growth in recent years, the nation has a higher rate of poverty than most developed countries, with a significant portion of its population unable to afford food and basic household essentials.
I think the poverty and the difference between the people, that the people have a lot of salary and the people who don't have a lot of salary, because we have people who work and they are still poverty, and they work, the parents work from day until to night, and they earn a minimum price, so they have to raise families. They have to educate kids, so they have a problem. And I think the poverty and the lower difference between the people is the main problem of our society.
25% of Israel's population, 20% of its families, and 36% of its children live below the poverty line. That is a total of 1.7 million people, a number greater than the populations of Estonia and Liechtenstein combined.
The welfare budget is cut every year, and we have a lot of defense problem. So the government invests a lot of money in this program. So we need help, when we need support to continue this program.
Statistics show that 21% of children from poor families in Israel have had days without food, and that 22% of individuals who have received social welfare assistance have considered taking their own lives.
Overall poverty has seen a slight decline in recent years, but there's still a lack of sufficient funding for social assistance programs that can meet the needs of Israel's diverse population. ICEJ Aid works in every sector of the society in partnership with private and government leaders to provide practical assistance to those who need it most. Through programs such as vocational training for women, educational enrichment and hot meals for disadvantaged children and youth, and the provision of basic household items and mentoring for new immigrants navigating the many challenges of integration in a new land, many have received essential aid. Additionally, we've been privileged to establish a therapeutic swimming pool for the disabled and a warm home for Holocaust survivors in need.
The aid from the Christian Embassy gives us the feeling that we have a brother and sister around the world. They support us in our bad days. They came here and they are with us all the time. During the war, we have a lot of people who came here and volunteers here and give us the feeling that we are not alone.
The ICEJ staff in Jerusalem have even taken part in hands-on projects, working at the grassroots level to bring support, love, and care to the people of Israel.
Jesus in Matthew chapter 25 teaches his disciples an important lesson about reaching out to the needy people around them. He tells them if they reach out to those who are thirsty, which are hungry, which are sick, which are lonely, and bless them, it is as if they were blessing Jesus himself. He says, what you do to the least of my brethren, this is what you are doing actually to me. And I want to invite you today to become a part of the social outreach ministry of the International Christian Embassy. We want to be your outstretched arm to the nation of Israel. And we want to invite you to partner with us to bless Israel like never before. Remember, we are your embassy here in Jerusalem. We stand for you with the nation of Israel. And please pray for us and support us. May the Lord bless you here from Jerusalem.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Erin Viner.
And I'm Rebecca Rand, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us next week for all of your Israel updates.